Hey, spin that broken record, DJ. It may be a new week, but it's the same old story up in here. All right, it's a must-win game for the Florida Gators, but this one is for real must win. I'm Brandon Carroll, your host here at Carroll's Cadence, and let me talk to you. Yeah, man. If you haven't gotten the opportunity, make sure to go check out my latest video. It's a rundown of the Gators' upcoming 2023-24 basketball campaign. I gave a little piece-by-piece analysis of the newly reconstructed roster and provided some insight into the program directly from my talk with the main source, Todd Golden, and projected Florida's finish come the end of the season. While you're at it, head over on to All Gators for my long-form feature of my talk with Todd Golden and talking about the pieces that he got back, the foundation, the pieces that he brought in and building through the transfer portal, and obviously what he expects the team to be in 2023-24. But for now, stay right here. Don't you go anywhere. We are going to have a great Thursday on this channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your score prediction in the comment section down below. I need it today, y'all. I need y'all to give it to me today. So go ahead, drop them comments. I'll give y'all a chance to do all that right now. Pause the video, and I'm going to sit here and wait. Wonderful, wonderful. As I mentioned, Florida plays host to Arkansas this weekend on the gridiron, a team that's reeling after a disastrous start to the season. Arkansas couldn't have concocted a worse way to begin the year, and the loss to BYU in week 3 really started just a downward spiral for the Hogs, and it's been rocky waters ever since. And it started mainly from their lackluster offensive form. All right, that's been the case. That's been the area that Arkansas has struggled mightily in this season. All right, they're 71st in scoring offense, was 26.5 points per game. They are 120th in yards per game in the NCAA at 305.9. They're 112th in rushing at 109 yards per game, yet they run the ball at a 57% clip. So the things that they want to do, they haven't been doing them very well. It's been no bueno for the Hogs off. They went into their bye week this past week and said, all right, we have to evaluate some things. We have to change some things. And as a result, a new play caller is set to take over the reins after the team fired Dan Enos during the bye week. And I just want to get this off my chest real quick. Oh, brother, this guy stinks! But it can be difficult with having a new play caller, even though it probably is an uptick from what Enos brought to their program. It can be difficult to get a pulse on what the unit will look like in week 10. And Napier has said a lot of the same things because they had an extra week with the bye week to be able to prepare, to be able to implement a game plan, to be able to kind of tweak some of the offense. I think the new play caller said that he's taken out like 30% of the offense and really kind of simplified it to a point where they're going to be able to kind of do things that they know they're good at. But based on what they've given me, the understanding of what I have when I've been watching this, it's a broken offense and it's difficult to fix midseason. So I'd go out on a limb to say that the improvement, while it might come in a small uptick of production, it's not going to be exponential because at this point, it's they are what they are, and what they are is garbage. And I know it's cliche to place the blame on an offensive coordinator, but I think it kind of deserves the scrutiny in this aspect. Because you went out last year, they have been up and down under Sam Pittman, but you had the pieces to be able to be a solid team. Obviously, losing Raheem Sanders earlier in the year to where he's been in and out of the lineup doesn't help, but it definitely shouldn't hinder the production to a point where, you know, you're a bottom feeder in the SEC as they are this season. And I like I said, I think he was the wrong hire from the get-go. And now 8 games in, the Hogs are 2-6. They're reeling, and they had a 3-point game 2 weeks ago in a 7-3 loss to Mississippi State. It's a Mississippi State team that I'm well documented saying they are the worst team in the SEC this year. So I place a larger portion of the blame on Enos, but I don't know how much it's going to fix by getting rid of him at this point. The offense was predictable. It lacked creativity, and I think it ultimately stunted the growth of KJ Jefferson, who I've been high on for a while. I think that he has immense potential, and I've thought that to be the case since he kind of arrived at Arkansas. and he's a fifth-year senior this season, but he's just never really been able to put it together. I thought this was finally the year, but I think it has been through 8 games wasted because of the offense's ineptitude. He's 143 of 219, 1,547 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the season. It's down from his 2022 form, in which he was 68% passing, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And I think a lot of it has to do with the volume at which he was asked to perform. He has been their lead piece on offense. He has accounted for over 70% of their production, and he has been their main guy. And alone, without some of the pieces that they have, even though they've brought in several guys that can aid him or can, it seemed as if they did, he hasn't been able to kind of get it done despite his best efforts. And that's why I think a late season push, a late season resurgence for this offense largely hinges on Raheem Sanders' potential return. I think if he does return, I think you could at least see some consistency and approach. At its core, this is a rushing football team. This offense is built to run the football. I think it makes sense for this unit to be more of an even approach throughout the rest of the year. We get about 50% pass, 50% run. And it definitely makes sense against the Gators, as they'll be trying to attempt to adjust without linebacker Shamar James in the fold and potentially Tyreek Sapp and Cam Jackson with their status up in the air as members of that defensive line. So a run defense that's already been shaky at points this year, could be missing 3 crucial contributors, could be a good game plan. It could provide Arkansas with a formula to go into Gainesville and kind of perform and see that uptick in offense if they're willing to play a matchup by matchup style. I know that's not necessarily a college football thing. College football is about getting the ball in the hands of your playmakers and letting them work, because this dude is better than everyone else on the field. However, if they go matchup by matchup, which is more often used in the NFL because the talent gap significantly shrinks at that level, I think that they're in a position where they can run the football against Florida, and they will try to run the football against Florida, especially if Rocket Sanders is back in the fold, because coming into the season, he was one of the SEC's top returning rushers, and he's been hampered by injuries to this point in the year. Like I said, it's hurt their offense. It's hurt what they've been able to produce in that area, and it's put a lot of pressure on KJ Jefferson to perform without a lot of help schematically to help him and aid him toward kind of realizing the potential that I know he has, or at least I've seen glimpses of since he arrived there in Fayetteville. So it's a recipe to tightly contest Florida, as they have several other conference opponents throughout the season, teams that are better than Florida. But ultimately, I think this offense is not good. And it's not necessarily a knock on the talent. I just think it's something that they've had to struggle with and deal with throughout this year. And it's proved to be a massive knock on this team throughout 2023. Defensively, they're very good defensively. The defensive side of the ball hasn't been much of a concern for Arkansas this season. They're ranked 32nd in total defense. They average 333 yards allowed per game. They're 47th in the country as a scoring defense at 22.8 points allowed per game. And they've really found this new life under defensive coordinator Travis Williams. He goes by T. Will. He used to be the defensive coordinator at UCF. And it's kind of been a very aggressive approach from T. Will. It's a 4-3 base defense with aggressive tendencies that like to send pressure after opposing passers or create pressure after opposing passers. You'll get a good dose of both man-to-man and zone. He's willing to, and honestly, it's more than just willing. He's kind of geared toward throwing in doses of cover zero, as seen a lot during his time at UCF. He just kind of lets his secondary man up with the pass catchers and says, all right, boys, go get after him. And that's kind of the defense that Arkansas is deploying this year, and it's worked to this point. I think it could open up some passing lanes over the middle on crossers, deep down the field, but it also is something that you have to have time to be able to execute. Graham Mertz has to be able to have time in the pocket to sit back there and let plays develop. And with the way the Hogs get after quarterbacks and get after passers and create pressure, that could be difficult for Florida to do. And then you look at how Florida wants to kind of run the football. Well, the Hogs will load the box. They're not afraid to sell out, whether it's on the run or rushing the passer. that's one thing that I think you should know. I think you should know that they're better than their record of 2-6 indicates. They're top half in the country in all the standard categories for a defense, and they're willing to get after the passer, and they're willing to load the box and not let you run the football to where you have to pass. That way they can pin their ears back and let their pass rushers loose on you. So I think they've done it in a way that, while going cover zero isn't necessarily the most sustainable practice, and it kind of leaves you susceptible to those big plays if you're not able to hit home. I think they've created enough pressure at a reasonable clip this season, at an effective clip, to limit the big plays, limit the explosives, and kind of put them in a position where this week, going into week 10 against the Gators offensive line that's been shaky, a little shaky at best, it's going to give them another opportunity to have another good day defensively. So I think ultimately this is going to be a lower scoring matchup than we kind of, if you would look at their records, you'd think might be a significant game of, all right, whoever can kind of light up the scoreboard, but that's not the case in Gainesville on Saturday. And usually at this time, I would sit back and I say, all right, so I've given you the rundown of Arkansas. Not good offensively, a lot of change offensively, very good defensively, not a 2-6 defense defensively, but they just are unable to mesh. They've been unable to kind of connect those two things and find the rhythm offensively to support what they've done defensively. And so usually I'd say, all right, so what are some keys to the matchup? Or I'd dive into how the offensive defense match up against Florida. But I think honestly for this one, it's more important to look big picture, because this game means a lot for Florida. This is going to be an odd one. This isn't going to be a walk in the park. Their 2-6 record shouldn't provide vast comfort, because as bad as the Razorbacks have been, as horrible as the 2-6 record is, as bad as their offense has been, as low energy as a noon kickoff in Gainesville will bring, at least from an atmosphere perspective, there is a ton riding on this contest specifically for Florida. And it feels like every week I sit down and I say, this is a must-win game for Florida. Obviously, I didn't say it last week, but, you look at really since Tennessee week, it's been, this is a must-win game for Florida. This is a must-win game for Florida. You got Kentucky, South Carolina. Obviously, playing against Vanderbilt, you didn't want to lose twice in a row to them, so it was must-win, but it wasn't necessarily something that was going to dictate the rest of the campaign. But I think, honestly, this is a must-win game for the Gators. And I've seen several people say, oh, they get upset about that label. Like, this is the SEC. What else do you expect? And it's week in and week out, every game's must-win. That's how it is when you're a national championship contender, and that's how it is when you're vying for a bowl game. And that's the position Florida's in this season. And of all the must-win games that Billy Napier's had in his short tenure at the University of Florida, I think this is the one that might be most important. You can't have a repeat of Vanderbilt in 2022, dropping a game to a team that you're supposed to beat by 2 scores, especially when you look at the rest of Florida's schedule and you say, oh, wow, this might be the last game they're able to win this year. It's harsh, but it's truth. So all of a sudden, a game against a 2-6 Arkansas team with the interim offensive coordinator in a low-spirited noon game is the contest that ultimately decides Florida's fate, their season. It's daunting. That's a difficult game to play up for, but you have to. And I think the narrative might be a little different if the Gators showed at least some fight against Georgia a week ago, but that wasn't the case. So this is the situation they're in. Win, you go bowling. Lose, and there are some tough questions being asked by the higher-ups in Gainesville, by the athletic department, and they're questions that Billy Napier probably doesn't want to know the answer to. And before I get attacked, let me just get this off my chest before people get huffing and puffing. Billy is safe. I think that he's able to make it into year 3. If you've listened to this program before, I've agreed to that. I've said, although I have believed that he would at some point be playing to earn his 7th win this season, whether it be in the regular season or a bowl game, I do think he gets a chance to get in and coach the 2024 recruiting class that he's compiled. However, if Florida doesn't get bowl eligible, if they finish the season 5-7, they lose out from here. the leash going into next year is going to be very, very short for Mr. Billy Napier. And it's in a season where the Gators arguably have the hardest schedule in college football history ever. Ever. So that's a way to say that this game matters more than the records indicate. It's not your average 5-3, 2-6 matchup. You're most likely going to get a rejuvenated Arkansas squad playing for their head coach as they attempt to kind of keep him in his job this year against a Gators team that could be reeling after the loss to Georgia last week, but they're going to be looking to rekindle that juice that they had right after a comeback win over South Carolina. So the Gators got to get a dub by any means necessary. If not now for win number 6, if not now for getting bowl eligibility, then when? LSU on the road? Missouri on the road? Florida State in the last week of the season? There's some tough games coming up for the Gators. But with that being said, as important as this game is, I think it's understood. I think it's understood not just by me, not just by the people tuned into the Florida program, but it's understood inside the Florida program. Billy Napier understands it. The players understand it. His staff understands it. And as a result, I do think the Gators are able to pull out a victory in the swamp against the Razorbacks. Listen, Arkansas has played close on the road all season against some of the SEC's top teams. LSU, 34-31 loss. Ole Miss, 27-20 loss. Alabama, 24-21 loss. And those are the 3 teams currently standing in 1, 2, 3 at the top of the SEC West. Arkansas's hung around. They've put themselves in a position to contend down the stretch, and I think they do that in this game until the fourth quarter. But given the magnitude of this contest, given what it means for Florida to be able to get bowl eligible and just kind of the time it buys for Billy Napier not to just be on that hot seat heading into next season, or at least the seat isn't as warm, I think Florida plays well enough to come away with the win. It won't be a dominant victory by any means. I think the game stays within a score for most of the contest. But I ultimately do think the Gators score late, put an exclamation point on a contest on the game, and walk out of Ben Hill Griffin Stadium as victors, 28-17 in Week 10. And I'll give you one bold prediction. And that's for Florida to have a defensive score. If that does happen, and I think Arkansas's offense, as bad as they have been, is susceptible to allowing that to happen, I like Jaden Hill to be the one to take it to the cribbo. He's been stout for Florida all year from that star spot. I think he's proven to work really well down hills and with screens and routes in front of him, being able to make tackles in open field. I think he could jump an out-breaking route this weekend and take that thing back to the house. We shall see. And even if that doesn't happen, oh well. It's just a bold prediction. But ultimately what does matter is I got Florida getting bowl eligible in Gainesville in their second to last home contest with a 28-17 victory over the Arkansas Razorbacks. I appreciate y'all watching this edition of Carroll's Cadence. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you have, man, be a friend, tell a friend about this here program. Comment your score prediction for the game down below. Like I said earlier, actually do it this week. I need y'all to give me some things to interact with. All right. I want to interact with y'all. So whether it's that or just chopping it up, ask me a question, anything, just leave a comment so I can interact with y'all. I will not be at the game this weekend. I'm leaving later today to head out to Chattanooga, Tennessee for a wedding. I know fall weddings, but that's where we are, and that's the priority this weekend. So make follow my boy Zach_Goodall on Twitter to stay up to date on the latest Gators coverage over the weekend. And I will see y'all again on Monday. I'm Brandon Carroll. This is Carroll's Cadence, and I'm out, you man.